Well, good morning and welcome to each and every one of you. My name is Hugo van Nispen. I'm the President and Managing Director of KEMA Consulting for the Americas, and as such, your host for the next 2 days. I would like to begin my comments this morning by extending to each and every one of you a very hearty welcome to the third annual KEMA Utility of the Future Forum. Of course, we are absolutely delighted that you have chosen to join us here today, and particularly happy that I see so many repeat friends in the audience, folks who have found the benefit of the first two conferences and are coming back for yet more. I appreciate that. We look forward today to an information-rich dialogue and an open exchange of ideas as we begin our formal proceedings in an event that is quickly becoming a rite of summer's passage here in the nation's capital. While I would like to say that at KEMA we are delighted to be able to host this event, I think it's absolutely critical that I first point out the fact that we could not do so if it were not for the commitment, dedication, and insights that our advisory panel offers us. In particular, Terry Boston, President of PJM, Ricardo Botelho, the President of Energisa in Rio de Janeiro, who unfortunately could not make the trip today, Don Cortez, Vice President at Centerpoint Energy, Lisa Johnson, Senior Vice President of ODEC, Artie Kressner, Director of Innovation at Consolidated Edison, and David Moeller, our very good friend and partner from Duke Energy. I seem to have some background noise here, so I don't know if someone could take care of that, please. Last year, our conference focused on navigating energy sustainability. And I'll, in a moment, describe to you some of the kind of highlights of that particular event and share with you the insights that we identified there and allow you to make the decision in terms of how well we prognosticated as a group the future. But before I do so, I think it's important that we begin the day by thinking through a very interesting convergence of events that happened yesterday. And I'm merely going to pose the facts to you, and I will, as with the rest of the forum, leave you to draw your own conclusions about those facts. The facts are that yesterday there were two competing news stories, aside from, of course, the General McChrystal one, which is interesting but not for this particular event. The first news story is that the Maryland Commission disallowed Baltimore Gas and Electric's smart grid filing. In part, their reasoning was that the benefits were not clearly identified and the costs were disproportionately being borne, arguably, by the customer as opposed to the utility or the shareholder. Moments later, I happened to be looking at Fox News and was reading the little trailer that goes under the bottom of the screen, and there was a news story that said that Apple had sold out of its first batch of 600,000 iPhone 4s. They were back ordered through the end of July, but no worries, they were going to have at least 1 million more in production. I'll leave it to you to draw your own conclusions as to who figured out the value proposition in this equation. But clearly, the fact that those two stories triangulated on the same day ought to be awakening for us as an industry. So last year, we heard about technology, and in particular smart grid technology, as an enabler, as a platform for future capability. We also heard about the risks that building such a platform would create for the industry. Risks of disintermediation, separating the utility from its customers. Risks of enhanced competition, new players entering the market and finding ways to compete with us as a utility industry. And some of the specific takeaways that we identified and that we posted to our website for the participants to reflect upon post-conference were as follows. Number one, we saw the opportunity for significant growth in the energy industry. New market players were entering spaces that traditionally had been the domain of the utility. And we were seeing new market entrants from across a broad spectrum of service providers, technology companies, information companies, data and communications companies, and venture-backed new starts that we weren't really sure how to categorize, but we knew that somehow they were going to change the world in which we were operating. For electric utilities in particular, we identified the fact that the then current economic climate and the threat of rising commodity prices that were evident at that moment were sapping consumer and regulatory interest and willingness to fund key utility projects. We identified the fact that the rapid entrance of new players would drive change in the industry in a way that we had not seen previously, and that in particular that change would be potentially disruptive as we considered the relationship between the utility and its customer. With slow customer adoption rates of new technology volatility and risk, and access to capital challenges, utilities needed to find a way to partner with companies that were moving aggressively into this space and to help facilitate the changes that we believe are essential to providing service in the coming decades. Significantly, we focused on the question of human capital development and what would be needed to transition a workforce that had been trained, educated, and focused on analog and manual into a digital world. And we understood that data impacts of how significant the transition to a real-time information model for our customers would be. We identified the fact that smart grid would challenge available job skills, would challenge all of the process dimensions, and would likely challenge all of the functionality that a utility provides, with the possible exception of the actual end product. We noted that in a smart grid, information should flow just as fluidly as electricity. With the massive influx of data that's visualized as we move to smart grid and to new technology, questions will inevitably arise over who owns the data, what are they going to do with that data, and as we heard yesterday in our opening panel, the question of, and what else are they going to do with that data beyond what they're telling us, come to mind. So fundamentally, attention must be given to how transparent a smart grid we want to create, from everything from acknowledging customer privacy rights to understanding how to share data in a way that enables the functionality that we so desire to be realized. Energy storage as a transformative technology was on the horizon. And I'm delighted to say that we're seeing this year a significant penetration of new storage organizations. And in particular, we're delighted to say that in our testing facilities in Chalfont, Pennsylvania, we're actively engaged with testing some of the newest technology that's rolling off of the minds of creative and innovative folks in the storage space. But storage fundamentally has the potential to change everything. The way in which we conceive of it, the way in which we manage our product, the way in which customers manage the product. The technology and applications of storage hold promise for solving problems on the grid that we heretofore were unable to resolve. Whether those be